Oh my goodness, welcome back to another episode of Learn to Play Yu-Gi-Oh! Today is episode 4, and we are talking about activation requirements. So when a card activates, it either starts a chain or it is adding onto a chain. In general, you will know a card is activating when you see a colon. So think of the colon and the term activation as like an umbrella. And underneath the umbrella of activation, we have different subsets. One thing underneath the umbrella of activation requirements is cost. And again, cost is denoted with the semicolon. So let's take a look at a couple examples. Okay, so let's take a look at Malice White Rabbit as an example. So it says, if this card is normal or special summoned colon. So that means that this card is activating in order to activate the on summon effect. Another activation requirement that this card has is you can pay 300 life points, semicolon, special summon it. So that again is cost. So after I pay the 300 life points, I can attempt to special summon it, but cost is paid right away. I pay the 300 life points, whether the effect to special summon goes through or not. But it is activating. That is an activation requirement to pay the 300 life points, and that is known as cost. Another thing under the umbrella of activation requirements is targeting. So a great example for targeting as an activation requirement is the Bistrels. So notice Bistral Magnum, it says you can target one light or dark monster in either graveyard semicolon. So we talked about cost and how, yes, semicolon does denote cost. It also denotes activation requirements. This is technically not cost. It is, however, something you have to do in order to activate the effect. Activation either starts a chain or adds onto a chain. So Bistral Magnum would maybe start the chain, I target, and then you can continue on the chain by banishing what I target. The chain resolves. We're gonna talk about the chain, y'all. I promise. We're gonna talk about the chain. And then it fizzles because it no longer has the target. The third thing under the umbrella effect of activation requirements is conditions. A good example of conditions as an activation requirement is Canine Lupus. So again, you know a card activates when you see that colon. So if we look at Canine Lupus, it says during your main phase, if your opponent has activated a monster effect in hand or graveyard this turn, quick effect. We're going to talk about quick effects, trigger effects, all that, but just realize that this is also considered an activation requirement because it is a condition in order to attempt to activate this effect. Quick effect is just saying the timing that you can do it. But in order to activate this effect, your opponent has to have activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard. There are two types of condition requirements. There's if effects. So with Lupus, the timing doesn't matter. I can ash something and then 5, things later in your turn, you can Lupus. You don't have to attempt to activate Lupus directly in response to the ash. However, there are some conditions that are when conditions and the timing does matter. Super common when condition is SB. So it says when your opponent activates a card or effect. So again, this is an activation requirement. You have to meet the condition, right? You have to meet the condition of your opponent activating a card or effect. And then it says when. So you have to directly chain the SB. So for example, I Ash Blossom one of your searches, right? You do not have to chain the Lupus. You could do that as the very last thing in your turn because you met the activation requirement, you met the condition, and it said if. Let's do the same example. I attempt to Ash Blossom something. If you would like to activate SB, you have to do it directly in response to the ash. You cannot have it be in like a later chain. So this matters for chain blocking. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons why when and if are important and timing is important, but just for this, for the sake of simplicity, if and when denote conditions that have to be met in order to attempt to activate the card. If does not really care about the timing of when you do it in your turn. When does care about it. It has to be the very next thing. We will get into all of this in more detail later in the series. I promise. Okay, let's review. We have our umbrella. It's called activation requirements. These are the requirements to attempt to activate your card. One of the first activation requirements we have is cost. You can find that with a semicolon. These are things that are paid immediately upon activating the card. It doesn't matter if the effect actually resolves. So again, activation and effect are separate. So cost, you pay it immediately, semicolon. Targeting will also have a semicolon. This is you need to target before the effect is going to go through. Then we also have conditional requirements. So if something happens, when something happens, that tells you, oh, okay, I've met a requirement in order to attempt to activate the card. So these are the requirements to activate the effect of the card, specifically for monsters. We'll get into spells and traps and all the other activation funsies later in the series. But yes, I hope that this was helpful. You will know a card activates when you see that colon, which means that it starts a chain or you can add on to a chain. That is the importance of knowing why something activates, because it will start a chain. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Let me know what else you want to see in the series. And, Alphonse has been sitting with me the whole time because he's also trying to learn to play Yu-Gi-Oh! The next best duelist. Catch him at your locals. What do you think he would play? Leave a comment. What do you think? What kind of deck Alphonse would play?